Hi, I just wanted to show you real quick just how easy it is to make the no waste flying geese, where you can make 4 flying geese at a time. So I am going to make my 4 flying geese to measure 2.5 inches by 4.5 inches unfinished. They'll be rectangles when we're done. So I followed the chart that I've included, and I needed a 5 1/4 piece of one fabric. That will be my goose. And then I needed 2 7/8, 4 squares of that size fabric. So I've got those all cut out and prepared here. So the first thing you're going to do is to draw a diagonal line on the back side of your 4 small squares. And I've gotten these 3 done already. So it's really easy. Just take your smaller ruler, take a very fine pencil, nothing fancy. You don't need a special pencil or anything like that. And just go ahead and carefully draw a diagonal line from corner to corner. And now what you'll do is you will pin 2 of the smaller squares into each of the opposite corners of your large square. So just go ahead and pin those on. And they are going to overlap just a little bit. Make sure that you have your corners lined up nicely, and you can see how they're overlapping there. You really just need like 2 or 3 pins to hold them in place. I always like to put one in the middle to make sure that my 2 overlapping corners stay nice and in place. And then what you'll do is you'll go ahead, and I'm just going to move the camera here. Please disregard the mess on my sewing table. And you'll want to do a scant 1/4 inch seam on both sides of this diagonal line all the way down. And when I say scant 1/4 inch seam, I know that my 1/4 measurement is lined up to the diagonal line right here. I'm going to move the diagonal line just a little bit closer, not even 1/8 of an inch, probably a 1/16 of an inch closer. You maybe are going to go 1/8 of an inch. That's okay too, because the size of these squares will give you a little wiggle room. And then what you're going to do is just sew a line all the way down on both sides of that diagonal line. So it really just takes a minute, and as you come up to your pins, you want to remove them. Keep following just a little inside of your 1/4 inch marker on your presser foot. And then when you get to the end, you don't even need to cut the thread. You can just kind of pull it out a little bit and spin that one right around. And again, I'm finding my 1/4 inch marker, and I'm moving a little bit closer to the needle with that pencil line that I drew on. And now you don't need any pins because your other seam will hold the squares in place, and just go ahead and sew right down the other side. And when you're done with that, just go ahead and pull it out, snip your threads. So the next thing you'll do, now that you have your 2 squares sewn onto the larger square, you'll want to cut this whole sewn section apart into 2 units. And you can either just use a scissors and cut along that diagonal line if you'd like to, or you can use one of your larger rulers and your rotary cutter and just cut those 2 apart just like that. Oh. There you go. So you'll have 2 units. And now we'll want to press those 2 units open. So I'm just going to move the camera back a little bit, and I want to show you how to do this. So you'll want to just hold the iron on the darker fabric just for a little bit on those smaller squares that are facing up. Now they're triangles. That sets the seam for you. So once you hold it, then just fold it over and carefully press each one up. This will eventually be facing towards your sky fabric, or towards those triangles. And do the other one as well. And when you're pressing, you want to make sure that you're not ironing back and forth. You'll really just want to hold that iron on for a few seconds and press your seams in place. Once I do that to the front, I always just like to turn it around and give it a good press on the back as well. just to really get that seam to lay nice and flat for me. So once you get one done, you can go ahead and do the other. Again, press your seam, set your seam, and then carefully fold it up and press one side, and then go ahead and fold up that other side. Because they were overlapping, you have to do one at a time, otherwise it gets a little wonky on you. These are so easy to make, and you're not going to even believe how quickly you can pound out some flying geese once you learn to make this technique. So I'm going to then use my other 2 small squares that I drew the diagonal lines on, and I'm going to pin them in the opposite corners of the other 2 that I had just sewn on. So for both units, go ahead and pin those in place. I think you probably know where we're going with this. We're going to sew again a scant 1/4 inch seam on each side. So again, line up your pencil line to your 1/4 inch mark, and then move it just a little bit closer to the needle. That'll give you just a little bit less than a 1/4 inch seam. And carefully start sewing down one side. Remove the pin as you come up to it. And then flip it around and do the other side. And then you can pull this one out, trim your threads, and you'll want to do the same to the second unit. So just a little bit in, a scant 1/4 inch. And because this is such a small square, honestly, I'm not even going to bother with my rotary cutter at this point. I'm just going to take out my my scissors and just cut these 2 apart like this. Just cut them carefully right in that straight line that you had drawn. It doesn't need to be absolutely perfect. These are the ends of the seam, the back side. Just go carefully though, so you don't snip something that you shouldn't be snipping. And then what you'll want to do is use that same technique and press each of these open. And they are looking like flying geese already. I'll get them all pressed and then I'll come right back. So now that all of the flying geese blocks have been pressed, we'll want to make sure that we trim them up so that they measure exactly the measurement that we want. Again, mine needed to measure 2.5 by 4.5 inches. So I've trimmed up 3 of them for you. Aren't they cute? And I'm going to show you how you're going to be able to use your small ruler to trim up your flying geese blocks. I really like the Easy Square Junior ruler. It's a 6.5 by 6.5 inch ruler. This ruler is invaluable for me, so I use it all the time. And I always include a link to it on my blog. But you'll want to take that ruler, and because of the measurement that I want my quilt blocks to be in the end, I'm going to take half of that 4.5 inch width, and I'm going to find where my 2.25 by 2.25 inch line intersect on my ruler. I actually use this measurement quite often, so I've taken a Sharpie marker and I've actually even just drawn a little dot where that intersecting line is, because as you can see, they're not complete lines in the 2.25 inch measurement area. So I'm going to take that where that intersecting dot on my ruler is, and I'm going to line it up with the point facing down on your flying geese block, and line up that little intersecting line, my dot, to the right to the point. And what the other measurement you'll want to make sure that you're doing